All right, so we might get started. Thank you so much for all that have joined us this evening. Really appreciate it. So, as is tradition, we'll start off with an acknowledgement of country. So, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners on the lands, the custodians of the lands we're meeting on today. And I pay my respects to their elders, past and present, as well as those emerging. I extend my appreciation to their cultural heritage, beliefs, and spiritual connections with these lands. I also acknowledge my gratitude that we share this land today, my sorrow for some of the costs of that sharing, and my hope and belief that we can move to a place of equity, justice, and partnership. So, as I said, great that you've chosen to attend. Thank you so much. I'll give you a quick overview of what we're going to go through, but first I'll just introduce myself. So I'm the Carer Practice Manager for Life Without Barriers. My role is working with a group of people in a team. So we've got a Carer Engagement Officer, Louise, and a few carer assessors. And we're on about really recruiting as many carers as we can. As we go through the presentation this evening, you'll get to see that the need is so great. And we really try to use this opportunity to really give you as much information as we can that's broadly speaking of the fostering experience within Victoria. So we'll hope to be able to answer some of your questions that we regularly hear from people who are keen to find out about fostering. It can be a very daunting area, but also very exciting at the same time. We'll talk a little bit about who we are at Life Without Barriers, what fostering is about, so what it's actually about in Victoria, because every state is quite different, and how it might work for you and your family. It's a great opportunity to learn about us and what we value as an organisation in helping children and young people. It's good to learn about generally about what defines a child in care and how they come into care and what it's like in their journey while being in care. We'll talk a bit about the different types of care that's available that you might be interested in. And let me see. And about looking at, is LWB, is Life Without Barriers right for you? Is it a right fit? Every agency pretty much operates the same way in Victoria, but also has points of differences. So it's really good to get a bit of a knowledge about that. We'll talk about the process of becoming a carer. So what's involved in terms of training, how we assess you. So how do we get to know you? Really important about that when we're looking at the types of children that come into care and how you can be matched with them. We'll talk about the role of a carer in a child's life and what makes a good carer. So we're not looking for a perfect carer, but what makes a good carer. And we'll also hope that by the end we are able to answer some questions. So towards the end, we address common questions, so frequently asked questions that we hear a lot. But we also ask in the meantime that as questions arise for you, if you can put them in the chat, Louise, our Carer Engagement Officer, will manage that. And we'll look at some of the questions that we didn't address, because sometimes there's really good ones that come up that we haven't thought of. So we really want to give you an opportunity for those. So she'll monitor and have a look at those. So who we are at Life Without Barriers. So we're an agency that's been going on for 3 decades, so 30 years. It was first developed by a determined group of people in the community who really had a clear vision to partner with people to improve their lives for the better. So we provide people with services and assistance they need so they can achieve their goals that they identify and maximize their opportunities. so they can really fully participate in society. We partner extensively with communities, elders, government, and the private sector to ensure that we can achieve positive long-term goals and change in the lives of people we work with. So as you can see, we've supported over 23,000 people in over 400 communities throughout Australia. So a national organisation. We also look at a number of ways of providing our services through foster care, family supports, so supporting parents in keeping their children. We're really big in the disability support area, the aged care area, mental health, refugee and asylum seeker support, really big, especially in Victoria, homelessness, and many more. We hopefully think that we really take on social issues and tackle them head first. So our values are really what define us, not just about how we look and how we present ourselves, but more importantly, by the way we interact with people, and really carry those values through how we build our relationships. So we want to work together with people to deliver our services, and we hope that really demonstrates our values. We're people too, and so relationships really come first. So while supporting people, we want to walk alongside them. So that really means listening, helps us really understand their goals and how they want to really connect in with community. We're imaginative in our thinking and open to new ideas and ways of doing things. We're respectful and caring in our dealings. So as I go back to that relationships and really listening, we need to be in tune with people and the community, the different sectors we work in. We see the big picture, but we never lose sight of the detail and really welcome diversity from all of the community. We're responsive, so we're determined to get things done and do them well. So it's one thing about collecting all the information about how people would like to see community be for them, but it really means we need to be responsive for them as well. We're very courageous in our convictions, one of my favorite values, and really want to stand up for what we believe in. So in terms of what is foster care? So foster care is a service provided to children and young people who it's been deemed can't safely live at home with their families, either for the short term or for the long term. And sometimes that long term means until they turn 18, the legal age of adulthood. So the Child Protection Department within Victoria decides and takes on the responsibility of identifying, along with the court system, children and young people who are deemed at risk of significant harm. And once they deem that significant harm or the risk of harm, is to decide whether the children are best cared for in foster care, where support can be provided at home to the parents, so enabling children to safely return back home. That's the very first goal of foster care, is always to work towards reunifying children back home, because we know that's the best place in the long term if parents can do it. And for some parents, it's really just about a matter of providing a bit of support. Sometimes it's extensive support. So, you know, the system and how the processes and how we operate within that system is really to give people a bit of a chance to get back on their feet. So you might have heard foster care talked about or referred to as foster care, but out-of-home care and family-based care. So they're all pretty much the same. I really like the family-based care in the area that we work in for bringing on carers. But if you look there, with nearly 50,000 children unable to live safely at home in Australia, we're always looking for foster carers. So we never have enough. You know, the great thing about with the foster carers is, you know, especially in the long-term space, they take on children until they're 18, and sometimes those children remain living in the home, and then they're not available to take on other children, so always need more coming on board. So why do children come into care? So the common reasons for children needing foster care range, you know, there's many reasons. There's children at the end of the day, they come with a unique set of needs and experiences. Almost all come from complex family and social situations. So it's not necessarily just one identified area, but they may have suffered neglect, trauma, or abuse. Some children that enter into care may have experienced or witnessed domestic and family violence. They may have been caught up in the middle of it, but definitely the trauma and the emotional, psychological abuse of seeing one parent being harmed is can be quite traumatic. We look at the area of overwhelming reasons children come into care is around neglect, and that, you know, is mainly parents not having the capacity, either in the short term or the long term to meet the needs of the children and be able to provide that safe environment. So in terms of neglect, social issues like poverty, lack of support systems. So most of families that we all function in, we have a strong family and friends that we can really rely and depend on when those glitches happen. But for most of the ones that come identified to the child protection system, don't have that extra support. So these tend to be very significant key factors that really contribute to why neglect is a significant area. The other area that impacts on neglect is parental mental health. And also what we don't mention there is drug addiction or drug use, those lifestyle choices. So for a parent with a mental health condition, it may be that they've just gone off their treatment plan, or it's been difficult to get to a therapist or maintain medication. So they may need a period of time to get back on top of that, to be able to have their children back. So they may need a period of time in hospital. The same with drug addiction. It could be that they recognize it's not something they want in their life. So they may need to spend a period of time in rehabilitation. And at that time, obviously, we need some children to be provided with a safe and stable home. What else are we looking? So another area that doesn't happen quite frequently, but when it does happen, it's quite significant, is parental death. And especially with those families or those parents who have deceased but don't have that strong extended family network that they rely on. These children need to be cared by someone, and the state needs to take on that responsibility. They can't be left to themselves. So in those cases, we really need to provide those care and support that obviously those parents who are no longer around can provide. And another area that comes up that's quite sad is when a child with a significant need grows and develops. So a child with a significant disability, it may become too much for a parent to do it on their own. And so they do seek out help and support from the government. So we can add that extra layer of support and, you know, really keep those connections and supports going on for families. So you can see there's a variety of reasons why children come into care. And as we talked about before, one of the first rules is to try and get them back home. So it could be just a bit of a glitch, or it could be a long-term issue. So who are children who are coming to care? So they age between 0 to 17 of years of age, and that's really the 17 right up until that 11:59 before their birthday, turning 18, and that's purely about the legal age of adulthood. Many children that come into care come in as a group of siblings that we would always try to have them with foster carers together. It's a big area that is an issue, trying to keep siblings together. We really want the children, while they're in care with us, is to be able to stay connected to their culture and identity. And that's really important in terms of, you know, some families who are newly arrived to Australia and they may have experienced a lot of trauma through war, and there's still their parents trying to get on top of things. Others come from cultural backgrounds that are well established in Australia. And whenever possible, we also try to match children with carers that identify from the same cultural, linguistic background. And that just helps them really to keep connected. It's already traumatic that we remove them from their families, but we don't want to remove them from a significant area of identity, which is their culture. So we really want children to stay connected to their language, cultural, and religious practice that are very important to them and their families. So that's really, it's for both the children who do end up returning back home, which is a great win for everyone, so that they're not as much disrupted and they're still able to follow through. But even those children and young people in long term, those significant areas of culture, religion, beliefs, and practices are still part of their identity. So it's really great that if we can match those families. Another big area in terms of culture is really the area of our stolen generation. So what we've done in past policies for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children. So we know they're 10 times more likely to have a care experience than non-Indigenous children. So we always will try to ensure that we follow the Aboriginal placement principle, which is enshrined in legislation, that really aims to keep children connected on country and in community, while it's also supporting all carers to build cultural competency to be able to support Aboriginal children in care. The other is that children, they have families as well. And these families, no matter what they experience within their family of origin, are still very important to them. So they still need their parents and siblings and other extended families. So we think about grandparents, aunts and uncles, cousins, to be somehow involved while the children are in care, and that they be respected by all carers. We always want to support families and carers to build strong relationships that are in the best interests of the children. It's always best that, like I said a few times before, that children are able to return home to their own families when it is deemed safe. So it's good if we have carers who really support that reunification process in partnership with Life Without Barriers and the children's families. So when children in care have all suffered some form of trauma, so I think I mentioned it before, just the mere fact that they've been removed from their families, we guarantee that that's a traumatic experience. So that feeling of separation, loss, and grief at being away from their family, but also being away from what's familiar for them, is really hard for children to manage, and they require a lot of support. So coming into care, we found, especially historically, we're getting better at it, but historically, lots of children coming into care lose connections with their family, friends, school. They might have been part of a sport club. So they really need to have a safe environment with carers so that they can express those feelings of loss and grief. You see down at the end there, children in care are ordinary kids at the end of the day, but they've had really out of ordinary experiences. They still have hopes and dreams and aspirations like every child we know and love. And then you see Karen, who went through the care experience in foster care, family-based care, and actually achieved a lot and really appreciated his time in being in care. So the different types of foster care. So these are generally the overview of the different types of foster care that Life Without Barriers really concentrate on. So respite care is usually a very planned and advanced experience. It's typically for a weekend, maybe for a week during school holidays, really up to about 7 days. It's a great space to support full-time foster carers with a break, but it also creates opportunities for children to mix with different social networks. So one of the areas for children in terms of traumatic experiences around being harmed is they need to find opportunities to develop trusting relationships with adults. So the broader network of adults in their network, including respite carers, really gives them an opportunity to experiencing more trusting adults. Emergency care. So emergency care is really about when they immediately need somewhere. So this can be that they've been immediately removed by the department, the government department, and they need a place right now. It could be 2 o'clock in the morning, it could be 5 a.m., it could be 6 o'clock at night. So the call can come from any time of the day or night. It's generally up to 4 weeks at a time. It also, we find emergency care can also happen for the full-time foster carers if something has happened in their family. So if they've become drastically ill, or a really important loved one in their family has become ill or has died and they need to go and travel interstate. So we'll utilize that space to be able to support those carers to be able to deal with whatever issues are going on in their extended family. So short-term care is really about around a 6-month period. So it's when the departments say to the courts, these are the issues and why the children can't be at home at this time, and we're going to spend some time working with the parents to get on top of these, and that we anticipate a 6-month or a year is needed to get the home safe again for the children to return. So those real connections, the family visits, really important, but it really emphasizes on the needs for children to feel safe and stable. So staying put with one carer, really to help to the opportunities to heal and be able to maintain but build better relationships with their families. So as I said before, just the mere fact they've come into care, they have a lot of grief and loss around that. So they really need that space to be supported with all these wild emotions going on for them. Long-term care is generally plus the 6 months and can be up until they're 17 and whatever, 11:59 p.m. before their birthday. It's really supporting them through the life cycle of going towards adulthood. Focuses primarily on stability, so we want them in one place. Just the whole journey of what happens for a young person, for those who've had children. You've got the whole thing of going through high school and you get to year 10, year 11, what are you going to do? Are you going to university? Are you going to for an apprenticeship, get a job, getting your driver's license? So all those kind of things that we really want to support young people to be ready for adulthood. So it really concentrates on that. So the other thing, it's not necessarily forever in long-term care. And I was a foster carer back in the 90s and I always thought long care was forever. But my experiences were that at times parents may get on top of stuff after 5 or 6 years and they can go to the courts and ask for an order to be revoked. And the court has to give strong consideration to that. Obviously, they'll seek the views and wishes of children and where they're at. And, this is where those family connections, those relationships, so when you're asking a young person what they want, it's really important that they actually know what their home life would be like if they were to go back to their parents after 5 or 6 years. So that's generally the different types of foster care that we look at. What is our approach for foster care? So it's really important at Life Without Barriers to use evidence to guide how we provide the best opportunities for children and young people in care. So to support the best possible outcomes for children and young people in care, we have implemented an evidence-informed therapeutic model of care from Cornell University in the States that is grounded in the 6 principles of care, creating conditions for change. So you'll see on there, they're really the 6 different areas really guide us as a model in how we work with children and families. So when we think about supporting them in having a stable place, embedding our values, supporting them through grief and loss and all the trauma they've experienced. So we like to think it's very much relationship based. I talked earlier about children and young people having great experiences of trusting adults again, matching strategies for change, so in developmentally focused. So we're not looking at their chronological age, we're looking at where they are developmentally. The trauma informed is really to look at those children who've experienced trauma, their brain is wired differently. So it's really having a balance and flexibility about expectations we have. The care model really emphasizes about the family being involved. So wherever it's ever deemed appropriate by the government authorities is really supporting those connections. So no matter how their parents are, be good or bad, it's important that they know who they are. And we also know through families it supports that culture and community connections. So every family has their own cultural experience, and there's things that get passed down and memories and stories get passed down. So families are the ones who really hold those. So it's important that they have those connections. So competence centers, so we really want to help children to develop skills and knowledge that really assist them to, social interactions and really negotiate everyday life. So an ecologically centered is really providing a supportive environment, the helpful models to show children really how to care for themselves, but also how to care for others. So having those positive experiences, around empathy and understanding themselves and understanding others. So it's not just about let's have a roof over their head, food on the table. It's about a whole experience that really, like it says, creating conditions for change. So the most important role in terms of carers, we need carers with a variety of attributes and beliefs that we know are good for our children. And a great way to get an understanding, especially firsthand from the couple that you see, Chris and his partner, and I'm not even going to try and pronounce that, and Gwen, and then you got Stacey, who was a young person who came into care. For technological reasons, we can't play them here, but they'll be in the chat available to you. They'll also be linked in an email that you'll get within the next 24, 48 hours. I really highly encourage you to have an opportunity to sit down. They're really only like 2-3 minutes each long. But sometimes I find it's best to really listen to carers themselves as opposed to someone like me chatting away in a professional manner, I hope. So yes, if you can take the time, that would be really good. So what do we look for in carers? So we know that children that come into care have had really tough experiences in their lives, so they really need help to understand and move through that. So we really need to hold their hand at times and walk with them. Sometimes these experiences mean that children haven't learned how to understand and express how they feel. And you'll find that the only way to let it out is through their behavior. They really need special people to be a safe space for them to be able to do that. So really to be able to adjust from that, I'm just going to behave this way, and being able to get to a space where they can really articulate and own their feelings. We know that great carers have some great attitudes that we look for. These are beliefs and ways of being, and values that really make them open, accepting, and stable people to lean on. So while they're developing trust in you as adults, they're also, part of the safety stuff is to really be able to, at times when they feel a bit wobbly, you've heard that before, is they really need someone to lean on, and they really need to know intrinsically that you'll be there for them. So we know that great carers are resilient and able to weather the storm, because there'll be a few hard days, but also being able to take joy and celebrate in the wins, no matter how small they are. Really celebrating them are great. Great carers are patient, at the end of the day, warm and empathetic people. So really having a sense of how I like to talk about it is having a sense of wonderment of a child, really trying to get to understand why children do certain things, and being open and being really curious about them. We know that no one at the end of the day has all the answers. And children, like we say before, they come with these unique experiences. I've been in this sector for over 30 years. I can still get surprised with children, especially really young children, and the experiences that they've had to go through. So great carers at the end of the day for us are open to learning, especially on the run, every day. So we want carers who really ask for help when they need it, but are also very important members of, we have care teams that we like to build around children in care. I've said it before, great carers are curious and they really want to know why children do what they do. We also know that caring for children is quite different from parenting your own children. So it's really important that you're able to have this time and space in your lives and your hearts to be able to provide all the attention and the attachment requirements that children need. We know that families will always be important to children, and preserving those relationships. I've talked about that a few times. However, so that we can ensure these relationships are long-standing in the future for children. We want carers who are open to knowing the families and support children to support family connections and stories creatively. So some of the children that come into care may not even know the aunts and uncles they have, the cousins they have, the grandparents. So sometimes coming into care, they get to reconnect with them or establish new relationships that they've never had an opportunity before. So we really need carers to really be creative about keeping those connections, and again, curiosity, being curious about the children's families. At the end of the day, carers have an underlying belief that all children can achieve great things with the right supports, the right environment, and the people that really believe in them. They know that everyone has their ups and downs, and there are going to be tough days as well as good ones. Great carers are compassionate, flexible, and fun. So we can go on about some of the hard stuff, but I've heard lots of carers talk about the joy of these children that come into their home. So lots of positives, seeing those little wins and developing, and know that you had a hand in that and an impact. So having fun is also really important. Sometimes we forget that. So I like to bring that one up and emphasize it as much as I can. So who can be a carer? I'm going to say it's likely you can. Carers can be partnered or single, with or without children, and from all backgrounds and all cultures. So, we want to look at everyone and anyone. For us in Victoria, you must be over 21. And we really ask that really having some relevant life experience involving children. We want you well and healthy. So we don't want to have a child come to you and you have a pre-existing condition that means you're going to be hospitalized on a regular basis. So that really disrupts the stability. a regular source of income is important. So whilst there is a foster care allowance, it's not substantial, but it does kind of help to cover those added costs that children will cause you some of your bills to go up. So any culture I've talked about, faith, ethnicity, religion, sexuality, or gender identity or expression. So a wide range of people, anyone from the community. Said it before, single or in a relationship. And they're also willing to undergo background checks, so police checks, both national, and if you've lived internationally within the last 10 years, we'd want to be able to get those background checks. And we also do child protection checks. So said it again, so with or without children, so it can be advantageous to have experience being a parent, but it's not the be and all. And we find a lot of single people have never had children because they've got the energy, they've got the real focus, they can be great carers as well. You can rent or own your own home. It can be renting private or through public housing, but as long as you're stable and you're not going to have to move in the next 6 months, that really helps for children. Have a spare room in your home, so children have a number of rights and the standards of care that they should expect whilst they're in foster care. And I don't know about you, but whenever I've visited people, even for a short term, it's really nice to have my own bedroom, to be able to put my own belongings and know no one else is going to touch them, but also a place I might need to go to just have some quiet time. We say they have a car and license. So while it's not essential, it is desirable because you can be asked in supporting children to and from school. It could be medical appointments. So some children who come into care have lots of appointments with specialists. The other is active and willing. So when I said about having fun, you know, sometimes some of these kids have never been to a playground. I've never been to a play center. So really wanting to have carers who have that willingness to have some fun with children is really good. Some of the best learning social interactions for children come out of play and having fun. So the next bit is, how do I become a carer? So really it starts off with a conversation with our team, so who can provide you more specific information about fostering. So I've been very broad in some of my information. They also, you'll find coming out of these webinars is you may end up having a lot more questions that you think of an hour after or the next day. So they're great at answering any of your questions. They also will assist you to go through an initial phone interview. So that's really getting to know you more. And I said at the beginning, we really want to let you know who Life Without Barriers is, and if we are the right agency for you, and then are you right for us in terms of our values and our care model. A home visit. So we generally do great things. Some of the great learnings we've gotten out of COVID is being really good at Zoom and team meetings. So we do a lot of home visits via Zoom. And that's walking through our application form and process. And that's when we get really started on those background checks that I talked about with police, so criminal checks and department child protection checks for every applicant and household members. As part of a requirement in Victoria, we'll take you through training. So it's called the Shared Lives Training. Really is an opportunity for you to get to know a bit more about children in care and what impacts on them, and also getting to know us a bit more, how we work as a team, and basically how best to respond to traumatized children. Once you've gone through that training and you're still going to stick with us, like we hope and we think you will, you'll have to undergo an assessment. So it's called a step-by-step assessment that's mandated by the government. And that's a series of interviews, about 4 or 5, that we really sit down with you as much as we can face-to-face. Some of those are done by Zoom. with yourself and household members to really look at your motivation, your willingness and your capacity to care, to be able to provide that quality of care for children that they're entitled to. Then it's called, the next step is the approval. So it's the accreditation process for us. So once we get through the assessment, the assessor will do a report and will present you to a panel, which includes the department, to say, we're recommending them for approval. And we look at areas of what's the type of ongoing support you may need, because every family is individual and different, and ongoing training from our team. So the next bit we'll look at is our most frequently asked questions. So I hope people are still putting some questions in the chat. Like I said, we may not have heard or come up or thought of some of the questions that we have got. So
Elizabeth, sorry to interrupt. It's just
that?
Sharon. I'm just letting you know nobody's chat box is actually working tonight for some reason. So we're just asking anyone to please type any questions into the Q&A box instead tonight. And we're sorry that we don't know why all your chats are disabled. So, but please, please just type them into the Q&A box and we'll be able to see them from there. Thank you.
Thanks, Sharon. I'm really sorry about that. You got to love technology, don't you? Sometimes it works brilliantly. Most of the time it works brilliantly, but so we do this all year and this is the first time that's happened. So so the first question we got there is, I am single, can I foster? Yes, families come in all shapes and sizes, so do foster families. So it really is about that ability to focus, have the energy, have the commitment to really hold these children and have that curiosity and ability to walk through and sit with them through their pain, but also have fun. We are a same-sex couple. Can we foster? Definitely. We really welcome diverse members of our community. The young people who come into our care have lots of diversity themselves. So having carers who have their own experience can really help for a young person in developing that trust and that experience and know that others have walked that path themselves. Can I foster even though I don't have children of my own? So yes, yes, it's great having that understanding and knowledge of children with having your own, but it's having that, it can be useful, but we also know that understanding children and having experiences of how they develop and grow can be gained in many other ways. So it is about those personal attributes that we talked earlier that makes a good carer that we're really looking for. And all this gets talked through the assessment process and through the training process. Do I need a spare bedroom? Definitely. This is non-negotiable at all. It is about children feeling welcomed, valued. If you're offered your own bedroom, you imagine as a child, you feel a bit more honored and respected. So it makes them feel a lot more welcome, but it's also about that rights of the child and those standards of care. We do know that sometimes sibling groups, if it's approved by the department, may be able to share a bedroom. So that is something that's always negotiable, but they definitely have to have their own space. Do I have to own my own home to be a foster care? So I said earlier, no, you don't. We just need you through the assessment process to really demonstrate that your home is safe and suitable to be fostering. So you can rent in the private sector, public housing, you can have a mortgage or own it outright. It is about that, that safety. So you'll have home environment checks that really goes through what we expect, but also what the government expects, that is providing a safe home for children. So if you're thinking about major renovations in the next 6 months, may not be the best time. If you know you're moving to a house that you just got built, maybe not the best time. Can I have my own children, foster other children? Yes. when you go through the assessment process, your family situation will always be considered when making decisions, especially about age, the age level, but developmentally, the level of children who may foster. So we generally speaking, we like to place children who are a couple of years younger than your own. We want to honor and respect your own children and where they fit in your family space. So we don't want to disrupt that too much. So if you've got, 5 or 6 year olds, we're not going to want to place a 15-year-old teenager with you. That can be really major disrupting. So, but that's a space we keep on assessing as we go along. Will all my family be involved in the assessment process? Yes, so everyone in the household has to be part of it. So everyone 16 and above has to go through a number of checks. So they have to be fully on board. We also will interview in consultation with you in how we do that, because you know your children best, but we'll also interview your own children. We want to make sure they're on board and they have some understanding. We don't tell them horror stories. We really work with you about how best to tell your children. We would have an expectation that you've already had some kind of conversation with your own children about what you're thinking and where you'd like to go with this. How are children matched to foster carers? So really that's about getting to know you really well. So we hope through a 4 or 5 month period that this whole process takes, that we've gotten to know you. So we really match children to carers as much as possible. So sometimes we get a lot of information about children who come into care. Sometimes we get really nothing at all. So you can imagine in an emergency care space, we mightn't get much until a week later. So we like to take into account your unique needs, of everyone in your family, your work schedule, schooling, your own interests. So we kind of want to match those as well. So we want to make sure it's all a good fit with your family, and really to help that create a sense of belonging for children. So they don't feel like they're totally disrupting your family. We also, things like with children matching to foster carers, I always think about this one is if you have a dog. So if your dog's a big dog, very playful, loud bark, we might know that a child actually gets, very wobbly, overwhelmed with loud noises, or they might have a fear of dogs. So we're obviously not going to want to put a child with you or with someone who has a dog, because that wouldn't help the process of healing and supporting that child at all. Can I choose the age and gender of a child? Yes, so our assessors, generally, yes, you can have a say. So assessors will work through with you once they get to know you as to, and will recommend what's a best fit, considering your skills, your background, all those dynamics, so your own children's age, and also, just maybe gender might be a thing, somehow have a boy of your own and you actually would prefer a boy because that all matches. Those are all the things we go through the assessment process. However, it's really important to keep in mind, if you really narrow down your preferences, especially around age, it can make it difficult to make a good match. So if you're only thinking about providing a safe home for a newborn baby or a baby 6 months and under, you're really limiting the chances of being able to provide care, because we may not get a placement referral from the department for a baby. So you could be waiting a long time. But that is something the assessors will talk through with you. How are we going for time? 10:02. So do children in care have ongoing relationships with their families? In most cases, yes. We want to make sure that those connections are maintained with family wherever possible, and as long as it's deemed safe. We know through myriads of research over the decades, it can be a good long outcomes for children in care. So as a care team, which includes carers, includes extended family, the parents, the department, case managers, will all come together to work out what's the best ways to support family relationships. So that could be just supporting a child to create a card for a parent's birthday. It could be phone contact. It could be putting together memorabilia so that grandparents, so it can be a myriad ways, whatever is determined by the care team. So what happens if the placement isn't working out? So said before, stability, that's safe, trusting, dependable adults for children is really important for them to do well and thrive. So we're not only just providing a roof over their head, food on the table, we get them to school. We also want to have opportunities for them to heal and thrive and get the nurturing that they may not have had, or we know by removing it's been disruptive. It's really not in the best interest of a child to be moved around continuously. It's another area, if they keep on being moving, why would they keep on trusting adults? So we really need resilient carers who will be able to work with the care team and really stick with the children through those hard days. But at the end of the day, sometimes ending a placement does have to happen. And we would like to think as Life Without Barriers, through our values and our care approach, is that we will be there for your family and for the child to really do a placement ending in as much as a positive way. So remember, it's something, the social skills, so being able to say goodbye nicely, that's warm and nurturing. And it might even be that you can't maintain the placement for them full time, but you may be able to have some ongoing connections with them, even if it's providing respite might be a good way to go. So remember, we're thinking about the children through this. So we want to do whatever way we can transition children from whatever stage of their lives, whatever place where they're living. We really wanted to do it in a way that's best for them. So how long does the assessment process take? So it is really ensuring we're getting to know you. So it's really ensuring that the environments we're providing for children are safe and nurturing. So you as your family, the physical state of the home, etc. So we really want to take you through a thorough process, which usually takes about 5 to 6 months from the time you fill out and complete the application form. So, we know there can be some movement around that 5 to 6 months, so it can differ depending on your circumstances. You may start the process but want to go on hold for a month or so because something has happened in your extended family. So remembering fostering is all about timing. So whenever you want to take a break through that process, you can and just work with it on that, and you may be able to revisit later, and that's okay. So we're not about forcing people into this, even though the need is so great. We still want to honour and respect that children have a right to quality supports and quality safe environments. So supports, so with Life Without Barriers, you're never alone. There's lots of supports. We know that even, new carers or veteran carers, there's still maybe times a difficult to comprehend experience of children bring with them. Sometimes, as I said earlier on, you don't always know fully what they've experienced. You may get to know it bit by bit. And so it's really important that you feel supported and confident in your role. So we don't want to ever for you to ever have a sense that you're on your own. So ongoing training is really important. So you would work with a case manager if there's any areas identified. So we have a plethora, a big catalogue of training that's available online, really trying to get back to some face-to-face in person. We have a 24/7 on-call support. So children sometimes lose it at midnight, at 2 a.m., at 9 o'clock at night. They don't work in a 9 to 5 space, Monday to Friday. So at times you may need to access that support, even if it's just talking through what's going on. So we have experienced people available to to walk you through that. Financial support, so I've talked a bit earlier about the foster care allowance. So you have that available to you. And depending on your circumstances, you may be able to access through Centrelink, family assistance, healthcare card, all that. Specialist support, so we have some staff on around specialist experiences, or especially in the trauma therapeutic space. So we have those available. Then we have respite. So if you're a full-time carer, we'll make sure you have respite available for you. We highly recommend for full-time carers to take advantage of that. It's also good if you have that regular respite care for the child, that if an emergency happens, that's the first people we would go to. And so it's familiar for the child, which keeps them safe emotionally, psychologically. We're also looking at developing carer networks. So we have a number of focus groups that's been happening. We're also getting back to doing a lot of, getting opportunities to meet other carers, and sometimes having conversations with them is the best way you feel supported. So we hope to reestablish connections that were disrupted through COVID. So that's me for the presentation. So Louise is going to come on and give me a sense of any of the questions that were in the Q&A, because chat box wasn't working.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that, guys, but we did have a few questions in the Q&A, so that's all good.
Cool.
And for those that haven't popped any questions in the Q&A, if you want to send them tomorrow when you get the video of the recording of tonight, that's all well and good. So the first question, Elizabeth, you probably answered a lot of these. Are you reimbursed for food?
Okay, so the foster care allowance that you receive on a fortnightly basis has been worked out in terms of what is generally some of the added extra costs that a child. So they've averaged it out in terms of food, petrol, in terms of transport, utilities, contribution to mortgage or rent. So that's the basis. So it's not an extra. So you can't go in with your grocery bill and say, please reimburse me. But definitely if there's children with specific dietary needs, it's really, when that placement is being offered to you, it's really talk that through with our staff to see what extra costs may come up for you.
Excellent. Okay, do I need a police check?
Definitely. We don't know you. We get to know you a little bit, but definitely it's mandated by the government. But even if it wasn't, Life Without Barriers would definitely want to do those checks. So we have to do those backgrounds. It's our obligation, first and foremost, to children. We're going to be saying to children, you're a safe person. So those basic areas are the first place to start with police checks.
Excellent. Okay, how long is the training, and is it accredited training or certificate of attendance only?
Okay, so it's certificate of participation and completion. So it's the shared lives training. So it's 8 modules as mandated by the department that you have to go through. So all through COVID, it was all through via Zoom. So it kind of took about 2 weeks, 3 weeks out of a month to get through that training. We have tried to get back to half the modules being face-to-face in person on a Saturday. That's been disrupted by COVID and flu season again. So we're back to the full Zoom. But you get a certificate at the end. So we have experiences of sometimes people doing the training with us, but then decide to go to another agency and vice versa. So because it's done in Victoria, it carries. So it's, if you've done it with us within a reasonable period of time, you don't have to do it again if you go to another agency. So as I said, we've had that with transfers into us, and we acknowledge that because it's all the same.
Excellent. Do I have to pay school fees and buy uniforms?
I'm not going to give an answer to that because it's a case-by-case basis. So that's another area especially within our state school system, that's brought into the foster care allowance. But in addition, state schools and some private schools, I'm thinking about some Catholic schools, do get extra funding from the government when a child in care is identified in their school. So there's an extra allowances to make sure that no child is somehow not able to fulfill their education. So it comes within the allowance, but it's also knowing that between the education department and the child protection department, they've worked together to make sure their needs are met. So a uniform is not being able to get a uniform should not stop a child getting to school. And the same with any other supplies.
Yeah, that's true. I have a housemate. Can I still foster?
Say that again.
I have a housemate. Can I still foster?
So that housemate has to be fully on board in terms of the application process and all those background checks. They have to be fully on board and involved in the assessment and training. So because they live in the house, we're going to make an assumption, and I'm happy to sit with this assumption. They're going to have some involvement with this child, whether it's having dinners, you're sleeping under the same roof, but it's whether it doesn't matter if it's a status of a relationship or it's a house sharing or a friendship, they're still going to be involved. So anyone within the household has to be fully on board.
Excellent. And is there a cost for the training course?
So there's no cost to applicants to attend the training. There's the cost of maybe listening to me again and again. So no, you don't pay any cost. Your cost is already your time and your effort and your willingness, and your interests. So no cost. You even get lunch. We even provide you with lunch when it's in person. When it's on Zoom, get it yourself.
Louise, lunch. Yeah. Okay, I have a very large but very friendly dog. Is that okay? He's very good with kids, but he is a big dog.
Yeah. So I said earlier about an experience, of knowing, once we know what's the characteristics, personality of your dog, you can still be a carer, be about making sure that the child who comes into your home is not re-traumatized by a dog. Sometimes, lots of times, I'm going to say lots of times, pets are so wonderful with children who've experienced trauma. They're so calming. They can be really helpful for a child to be able to become calm. So if they're sitting there patting them, being able to feed them, so developing another skill of empathy. So pets are absolutely wonderful with kids in care. So it's just about that matching, and our assessors, come to your home and they'll get to know your dog, and they'll be able to record that really well. So yeah.
Another one. I'm in my early 60s, so that's very young. Is that too old? No way. I have lots of time to give to a child and I'm in good health.
Fabulous. When are you signing up?
Yeah.
So 60s are, I'm going to say, are the new 40s. It's the healthy and fit is the really important thing, and having the time and being able to be active with a child. So no, get that out of your head. 60s are great.
I know.
I'm on the verge, so that's why it's so great.
Me too. All right. I live in an apartment with a spare bedroom, but I don't have a garden for kids to play in. We have parks not far away. Is that okay? Or do we need to have a garden?
So, no, you don't. It's great. You have parks nearby. This is all stuff that will be taken into account when the assessor comes and meets with you. Safety is really important in terms of apartments, so balconies, that kind of thing. If you're willing to take a child to the park and do that running around and having fun, that's that's just as important as having a backyard. So it wouldn't preclude you at all. The safety thing of balconies is what we really look at with apartments.
Yeah. All right.
Oh,
Can we use a babysitter?
Can
we use a babysitter sometimes if we go out, or does that babysitter have to go through the whole assessment process?
So babysitters in Victoria do have to go through an assessment process. It's not as thorough as the one you go through, but definitely they have to go through all the police checks and the child protection checks. So, so we'd want to know that it's a regular babysitter you have that's known to the child. So through the assessment process, we'd ask you if there's someone you would identify, and we can start that process through the application phase and through the assessment phase. The more conversations we can have with them, the better. So we're able to say when we go to panel with the department that these are the people who are involved in this family dynamic. So it's not just about finding a 15, 16-year-old who can do it. Again, it's about that commitment we have to children to have these rights to be safe and protected. So, and predictability, knowing who's going to be caring for them. So, so yeah, that's really important. Good question. It's the first time I've had that one.
I've got 3 spare bedrooms. I'm probably a bit of an empty nester. Can I request siblings so they can stay together and not get split up?
Music to my ears. Definitely. It is a very hard area keeping siblings together. We work hard if we can't have them under the same roof to be able to stay within life without barriers so that they can have visits. But if you've got the space, the commitment, the energy, the time and the attitudes, definitely, if you can have a sibling groups and adolescents, whoever wants adolescents or sibling groups are music to our ears. So please give us a call. Please give us a call.
Okay. If the child is very unhappy or unsettled in your home, what guidance and support do you provide?
Yeah. So listen, that's a reality. You know, sometimes children go through the honeymoon period, you know, unsettled, unhappy. It may be, you know, the whole thing of trauma, but really the grief and loss. They're sad, they're lonely, they miss their parents. The support you get, so you will be, once you have a child placed with you, you will have a case manager who visits your home, is in regular contact with you. So they're your go-to person around any of the supports. Case managers we have are highly experienced. So, and even if they don't know the answer, they do have managers who are been around for a very long time. So it may be extra supportive training. It may be linking in with specialists. So if a child is already engaged with a therapist or they need a therapist, we really want to work with you on your knowledge and experience of the child. So when it comes to the care team, really informing the department and Life Without Barriers what you see the child needs. So we want to hear from you. We want to support you through that. Like I said before, some children come with, we know a lot about them, and others come, we don't know much. So you're going to get to know this child like no one else is going to. So we really want to know what you think the child needs. So yes, I'm going to say yes, we support you.
Excellent. Okay, if I already have a child check and a police check and a first aid certificate, does this lessen the process time?
So yes, as long as it's recent, like, you know, obviously a police check done, you know, over 6 months ago, we're going to do another one again. I suppose so we have certain steps we want to take before we have you go into training, but we're also opening, do you have the training and checks not being fully done? So I wouldn't necessarily say it speeds up the process because most police checks come through pretty quickly. So yeah, I mean, it might speed it up by a month, but really the training, the assessment is the areas that take up the biggest amount of time. Would you say, Louise? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people tend to come through with their own police check. Everybody has nowadays, but yeah, we still have to run one via the agency.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think it's a prerequisite.
And we have to link your working with children check to Life Without Barriers. So
excellent. And just two more. Do you come over to the house to check the house?
Definitely. So one of the main areas that we start up first is the home and environment checklist. So that's primarily to look at the physical safety of the home. So if there's any areas that we see may need to be altered, it might be something like fixing up a fence. It could be stuff like safety locks on cupboards. So we do that as early as we can in the assessment process. Yeah.
Excellent. The lucky last question. Do you have teenagers that need foster care? I think I can relate better to an older child as I have children of my own, no experience with babies and toddlers.
Yeah. Desperately need carers for adolescents. These people get really scared of adolescents, and listen, some of them can be quite scary because they're bigger than you. So it is an area that we don't have a lot of carers putting their hand up for. So LWB, Life Without Barriers, and the department get very excited about carers who say they want to care for adolescents. So I'm hoping you ring tomorrow.
And another person has just typed in, who decides which school they go to?
Oh, this is always an excellent question. So when children are removed from a home, they first and foremost have to be placed with carers within the same division. So, and especially when we think about, if you think about the short term, is always about getting children back to home. So we've already disrupted them, moving them away from the home. So we don't want to change their schooling. So everything and anything needs to be done to maintain them at school. So remember those, when we think about identity and those important relationships and connections. The other great thing about keeping them in the same school is the school knows them and come with a wealth of knowledge about this child that could also inform you. So keeping the same schools is kind of, making a change of schools is really hard to do, It gets easier if they're in the long-term space and become part of your family and it's been a long-term placement. But yeah, we got to keep them in the same schools as much as possible. Those connections are vital. That it?
Yeah, that's it.
And we've gone over time again. I'm so sorry. Thank you so much for... Yes, thank you so much for all of you who attended and stuck with us, and some brilliant questions. Thank you so much. We look forward to hearing from you all. Thank you heaps. And have a good evening.
All right, take care now. Bye-bye.
Bye.